truly inspirational is shortballing this one because it was just amazing and so much to talk about, and we don't have all that much time. But I'd like to start with mostly the filmmaking, a lot of filmmaking questions, and then I want to ask some personal questions about your journey and how that's gone. Just so moved by this film. So you said before the film that you started out how you got involved at San Quentin. When you went in as a volunteer in the beginning, were you already a filmmaker?
Before we start, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. I do want to point out my producer, Hella Winston, is also here, and she's local here to the area as well. I went to film school. I have been a filmmaker. I became a volunteer at the prison after principal photography ended.
Oh.
It took a while to get permission, obviously, to film in the prison, but I became very inspired by Coach Frank and the volunteers, and really seeing the amazing impact that an individual can have. And so then I started volunteering at the prison's media center.
Okay, so how did you get that access? Because the access is incredible. In any filmmaking, the access is so important, but in this one, because of the regimented nature of prison life and the lockdowns,
the two P's, polite persistence. Lots of unanswered phone calls. Just about 9 months of all of that.
And the pitch was that you wanted to do the 1,000 Mile Club. You wanted to do the marathon.
Yes, they knew that I wanted to. About the marathon. But, the thing about going in the prison is that every time we filmed in there was no guarantee that we were going to get another day. Right. And, they'll say, oh, okay, yeah, you are going to get permission from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. or something like that. But by the time you actually get in there, it's like 10 a.m., and so you're just completely tight for time, and it's very stressful, and you're already thinking about what am I going to have to drop before you enter.
It was incredible. And before we get on to the other aspects of the filmmaking, which is given the access that you had and the time constraints you had, it's really kind of remarkable. I was looking at a lot of the different angles and the tracking shots and the different things with the constraints of being in the prison. But the score, right away, we start with a heartbeat ahead of time before the credits start, and then we get into it. And I saw at the end that the score was original mixed from the prison. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me that question. So, running and music, as we know, go hand in hand. So I knew that the music part of this and just the overall soundscape was going to be a very important part of the, telling of the story. And, but none of the music that I had for Temp, music from the outside, was working at all. It just didn't sound like San Quentin. And so I met this guy, Antoine Banks Williams, while he was still locked up at San Quentin, and he had been producing music tracks, and I started using his music, and then this other guy, David Jassie's music for temp tracks, and I was like, man, this is great, this is what San Quentin sounds like. And then Antoine paroled was released in 2019, and then that was able to facilitate our collaboration. This was his first film score. And then a lot of the songs, the different rap tracks you hear were all produced, performed, written, composed, everything inside San Quentin.
Well, it was absolutely a perfect fit and seamlessly done. I thought it was incredible. I have one quick question. Was it Markelle? Were you the one dancing? Mm-hmm. Yes. And was the score the same as what you were listening to on your headphones? No, it was because it worked really well.
Yeah, no, we had originally were using the original song as temp music, but that was a popular song by a popular artist, and this is a small indie film on a shoestring. So
well, it fit perfectly. That's why I had the question. So, what year did you start filming?
2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you know the outcome. You didn't know the outcome when you started to film.
Hell no.
So-
Yeah. I mean, the first time I met Markelle, our first interview on the yard, I think I had asked him, what his running goals were, and he said that he wanted to run the Boston Marathon. And I'm thinking this guy was already 16 years into a 15 to life sentence, had been denied parole twice, and of course we all know it's very hard to get out of prison. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was sort of, like, yeah, right, buddy, but hey, shame on me for, not thinking that that freedom was attainable. And so we found out that he was paroling in 2018. And then we thought, well, we have to get that. And then his last marathon, he qualified. And then we're like, well, we have to, do that. So it just became this, an organic process.
So there's a process for qualifying for the Boston Marathon while you're still locked up?
Well, so he made the qualifying time, and early on in our research process, I had connected with Dave McGilvery, who's the race director of the Boston Marathon, because he started the first prison running club in America at Walpole Prison in Massachusetts, a federal penitentiary. So we had connected, over that. And so when he qualified, then, the coaches were like, hey, you should contact Dave McGilvery, but it was a whole entire process for Markelle to even get there to Boston. There's a lot of...
So you're still filming, you know that Markelle's going to get paroled, and then you say, well, we're not going to cut this together until we have what happens with the Boston Marathon or anything else. So you knew that from the jump.
People thought I was crazy, but because it was like 6 weeks after he got out, and to go to Boston is incredibly expensive, especially at that time. Hotels are like $750, $800 a night. Again, we were pay as you go situation here. So we had to raise a bunch of money in a very short amount of time. The Boston Athletic Association, of course, had their licensing fees and all that kind of stuff. And we didn't know if he was actually going to get permission to travel across country as well. He usually, when people get on parole, right, they're limited to a 50-mile zone. So we took a huge, really leap of faith to plan the production and all of that.
And how early into the process did you decide you were going to focus on those three people, on Rahsaan, on Tommy, and on Markelle?
So I met Markelle. He was one of the first people I met, actually, the first day I went inside the prison. Markelle and Rahsaan I first met. The third person, Tommy, that took a long time to figure out who the third person was going to be. Originally, there was a guy who was paroling, so we thought maybe we would do a re-entry type of story, but he didn't really want to be filmed, and that process. But on one of my trips up to the Bay Area, I live in Los Angeles, I met Tommy Wickard's wife, Marion, and I thought that maybe this lunch coffee would be like an hour or something, and we ended up talking for like 5 hours. And I thought, man, I have got to get them in this movie, and what an opportunity to show what, the challenges of trying to maintain family relationships, being a father and a husband from prison. So I was very grateful for their participation.
Okay, so and structuring the film, after you picked the three people, I thought it was kind of a masterwork of narrative, because you go, in maybe the first third of the film, you're building up to the marathon, and then you get into the marathon, and then you start to intercut the stories, which you've already started before that, but follow those stories that go back and forth. How much of an editing challenge was that?
Oh my gosh, this was the biggest, editing challenge of my life. One of the biggest creative challenges I've ever faced. I started editing the chapters first, before I actually got an editor on board. And then actually COVID, the pandemic, facilitated getting an editor on board. I was working on a show and there was an editor I was working with, and suddenly he was twiddling his thumbs going like, hey, and had been mentioned that I was doing this film. So he helped with the, we always knew that we were going to be using the marathon as the narrative superstructure, but balancing that out was definitely a challenge. And we had so much great running footage, from every possible angle. So it was just a huge task just to wade through all of that.
Well, and the result, one of the results, I think, is that it turns into a wonderful suspense film in terms of a number of different things, in terms of who's going to finish the race, are they going to make the times they wanted to make, how are they going to do. Also, a suspense in finding out what's the backstory on these people, what is the crime, what is the arc that they've gone through, and will it be successful in getting to where they got to go. So, but that's all due to the editing in a lot of ways. But to filmmaking specifically, you did say you had a lot of angles. How many cameras did you have? I mean, during the marathon, I saw you from a couple of different angles in the same shot. I mean, the dancing around, Timbuktu's dancing around, from the back and from the front. Yeah. And so
that day of the marathon, we had about, I would say, 6 cameras out on the yard. We had 3 different kind of field units, 6 cameras, and then we were able to bring a jib arm in. Well, so, the marathon, as you see it, is really 3 different races, and what it is every time, because we shot this 10-mile run first. That was our first day out on the yard, and I think we only had maybe 2 cameras, and I had been there to see running events, so, we knew that we wanted to do this as a multi-camera production because it's a real sporting event, and I wanted to honor that, real athletic event and make it, suspenseful and beautiful, but every time we went in, we got to know the administration a little bit more. They, we could figure out what would fit in the doors and what kind of equipment we could get in, so we were always, each time we went in trying to get a little bit more. But yeah, for the marathon, I mean, we had maybe, 10 cameras out in the yard, GoPros, and we had one of the runners actually put like a GoPro at his mouth, like as a mouthpiece, so we could get that feeling of like being on the track and stuff like that.
Well, it was marvelously done, and I got a lot more questions about the film, but I want to talk to Markelle a little bit about this journey, because I think from Markelle and from the other 2 main subjects, you got such wonderful, no posing, no attitude, just really sincere, and with, Rahsaan having really no hope of getting commutation, and then he does, and then Tommy is still looking for it, but obviously deserves it, and the statistic at the end about nobody that's ever been released from the running program has ever gone back again. But for you, coming out, re-entry's hard enough. Is it harder or easier now that you're a celebrity?
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Sag Harbor. I appreciate y'all allowing me to be here. Thank you. I think it's evenly challenged. I think prison prepared me well for the outside reentry into society. The reacclimation part was, and it still is, challenging in some aspects of my life. However, I'm really enjoying traveling and meeting new people and networking, and I ain't never had this experience of going to different parts of the country before, so I'm really just riding this wave and enjoying the moment.
Well, as well you should, but it's not just traveling to different parts of the country. You're also a star of a film now. So, I mean, you're getting a lot of questions, a lot of attention, a lot of other stuff. So you talked about, while you're inside, you talked about using the Sport Network or when you got out. And we all know different support systems for sobriety and other things. As you're traveling around, what kind of a support system do you have besides the director, who's obviously a big supporter?
Yes, the coaches that are in there, I think and I think it goes both ways, and they can attest to this if they were here, that by them allowing me into their life, I think the love of family and community and the ability to have forgiveness and that whole piece of family love and support was there through all the coaches. Every last one of them that was in that film, I've either been over their house and ate dinner, or we went on races together, the whole nine. And then from them, I've met other people and other runners and more races and meeting more people. So it's just a big old running family community.
Well, that's a great thing. So from when you originally went in, how long was it before you got involved in running? I mean, I know you were running as a young guy, but when you were locked up, how soon did you get to? How many years was it before you started to run, or was it right away?
My life crime landed me in prison in 2001, and I didn't start running until 2015.
Really?
Yeah. So it was a friend of mine who committed suicide, so I just built up in myself the ability to just start running to relieve stress, because I didn't want to end up like he was.
And you did that on your own without
Yes.
any coaching?
Yes.
And that was not until 15 years in?
Yes. And then a friend of mine who was a part of my religious circle, because I got baptized in prison as well, and he was already a part of the club, and he was like, why don't you join the club? If you join the club, there are some incentives there. Like you can get a nice baseball cap and some tennis shoes.
What about the rain hat? You get the rain hat too?
No, that was just plastic covering the nice 1,000-mile club running hat that I didn't want to damage. So.
I guess so. So you got the incentives, and you said, okay, I'm going to join the club.
Yeah, so then once I did that, it's like everything else that it just seemed like something was missing. So when I joined the club and I was able to get this family of support from the outside coming in, besides the other self-help groups, this was a little bit more personal because these coaches, especially Frank himself, came in consistently, and there was no judgment, and I just felt comfortable, and I was starting to open up and be more comfortable and relax. And so by joining that club, they helped change my life. So from the time I joined that club, after I worked on myself through self-help groups and being baptized and being with my spirituality, the running just capped everything else, put everything back together in this proper perspective for me, and I was already free 4 years before even being released.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. So the self-help you were doing, that also started more when your friend committed suicide, along with it starting to run? The getting baptized, the rest of it?
No, I think the self-help, especially when I transferred, because I had to dwindle down from different levels of incarceration to San Quentin, which is a different place, unlike any other prison, even at that time, because it continues to change.
Okay.
With that being said, the self-help groups that they allow in San Quentin were different, because they had outside people in these small circles, in these groups, helping us to find what was going on with us before our incarceration phase, during our incarceration phase, and how we could work through this stuff and find who our true, authentic selves are, and then what we can do from there to continue this growth and this maturity and becoming this decent human being.
Oh, it's a magnificent change, and at a tremendous cost, obviously. But just so impressed with the insights that you and the other members of the film came through with. And you filmed a family of people, in Rassan's family in New York. So you traveled to New York to do that while you were filming in San Quentin during the period?
That was in 2018. It was always a the whole thing was always a constant process of discovery because of the time we were inside the prison was always so limited. You know, you're in there for a workout, maybe 1 hour, so, you know, and the guys are working out, so you don't want to disrupt that. But, you know, you need to have some time to, you know, you have a few minutes to ask some questions, you know, a little bit about your family. So it was important for our team to try to get the whole story of people's backgrounds of what really were the, you know, the cause of them, what led them to prison, and then of course what was the changing moment for them that would lead them to the starting line, you know, proverbial starting line at the marathon.
Right.
I do want to mention though too that Tim and Diana Fitzpatrick, who are the husband and wife coaches in the club, they're originally from here. They and their coach is right there, Clifford. Yes, who also married them. So I do want to mention that.
That's tremendous. Yeah, well, everybody on the team seems to be, all the coaching teams seem incredible. And then, as I said, the insights that come through from all the different people, Rassan's sort of dissection of the societal nature of what gets people incarcerated in the first place at the end. Incredible insights that you have, and getting his brother's perspective on him from the beginning and then where he is now and all the different things he's involved in as he's walking around to finish the marathon.
I know, amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how much more following up are you going to do on any of these people?
Well, you know, the amazing thing about, I mean, we loved the story of the 1,000 Mile Club and just working on the film. I mean, it took us 6 years, you know, to complete it, but our team, of course, we had a ton of challenges and figuring out, you know, how are we going to pay for this and all of those financial challenges that come with indie filmmaking. But we loved doing this film, and we also shot so much stuff too, other things outside the prison, you know, with the coaches and things that unfortunately didn't make it in the cut. So if we are able to somehow continue, you know, we would love to.
Well, it's great to see that Washington started a program.
Yes. Washington started one, and then now we donated the film to the California prison system. So it is playing every day now across the 32 prisons. 95,000 people now have access to it every day at 4 o'clock. And so we just found out there was a new club that was started in Salinas Valley Prison. And then San Francisco Probation Office started a club. And we have had screenings for the inside the governor's office and for all of the parole commissioners, for the California state legislators. We do, you know, want the film to be used for positive purposes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's no better way to put pressure on the governor and the parole board than to see this film. I mean, it's proof positive of how well it works. I think we got a couple more minutes if we have any questions from the House. Please. Go ahead, right here. Oh, wait for the mic, sorry.
Thank you, you two. And for the gentleman, I'm interested, how is it for you to deal with other people who haven't been in prison? Here we all are, for example, or the people you see every day. We all have our lives and our values and interests and stresses. But you've had more, or you've had to face them, your own stresses and situation, day after year after. Your life has been much harder than mine. So when you meet other people like me, how do you not sort of feel that, oh, well, they don't know, to sort of dismiss them? Or does your religion help with that? How does it affect your relations?
What I've been through in my lifetime, thank you for the question, it was beautiful. What I've been through in my lifetime, from my childhood growing up, my incarceration phase, and what I went through to help with my transformation of my own life to get back to who I truly am and who my mom and dad and who I feel I should have been and should be. When I meet people on the outside now, it just seems more like I appreciate people more and I understand people more, and it's easy for me to forgive when people don't understand. And I've always been a people's person. I think my spirituality had 100% to do with it. My upbringing, even though I had these challenges. So I think everything in this whole, I just appreciate it, just extremely grateful and appreciative to even have a second chance to be out where I can be in front of you guys today. So all of that stuff keeps me in my proper perspective.
I'll tell you, I don't complain really about anything anymore. You know, after having spent those years that myself, you know, seeing what I have seen, I really don't complain a lot about anything.
It's
anymore.
really an interesting perspective. Right here?
Going back to prison, so you lived a very righteous life in prison, and you alluded how difficult it was at times. Being in prison, you couldn't discuss everything, you know. So how difficult was it for you on your path compared to other inmates and the multiple other inmates, I assume, who weren't exactly on your path? Can you comment on that daily existence?
Beautifully said. Prison is a challenge. I think today, the way San Quentin is, it changed even more because of certain places flipped 2 or 3 times. However, in my incarceration experience, it wasn't easy. War zones, riots, fights, all kinds of things that, like I said in the film, I really can't talk about. I want to put them in a book, and I want to write these things down and get these things out. It's just I'm trying to figure out how I can put it together, but it is not easy. It is very tough, and I think that experience is what makes society today out here and the challenges that I do have here seem like kindergarten.
Well said. And in the film, there is, well, you couldn't speak about it, but you alluded to it, and you had people that weren't necessarily part of the film talking about riots, talking about what it was to be like in one particular camp or another, and what you had to do in a case of a riot to protect yourself. You had to join in and so forth. And that description of it being like a fire spreading or like a virus. So it was good to, while Markelle couldn't talk about it, to let us be aware of just a fraction of what it must be like to have to deal with that. Do we have someone else? Oh, right over here.
I just wanted to ask Markelle which year you ran the Boston Marathon, and was it different from how you imagined it was going to be?
Thank you for that question. In prison, when the guy was narrating and he was standing on top of that corner, that is one of the hardest places to run through because you got people crossing, you got the horseshoe pit, you got the basketball games, you got people crossing over at will to work out on the workout bars, and then you got people walking in the opposite direction. So that's why I was saying, like, things change. So it was very difficult. I even thought about making getting a video game created, like Grand Theft Auto, but just San Quentin Yard running a marathon. It's that difficult. However, that prepared me and trained me for mental toughness when I was running in a charity team for Boston when I first got out in 2019. We was the very last wave, the 4th wave, the very last corral, the 6th corral, for like thousands of people. And I had to navigate through all of those people to get up there with the first wave and run one of my fastest times when I first got out, only a month and a half after incarceration.
So what year was
He also
that?
went back to Boston.
That was 2019.
And last, what, 2 years
Last
ago?
year, I went back to Boston after COVID. Well, I don't know what, it was after COVID, but it was 2022. 10 days before I flew out to Boston, I got a call from my parole officer, and he said, "You are off parole." So the first time I was out of prison off a life sentence, and I ran a 3:03. And then last year in 2022, I ran 2:52 flat. Off.
All right. And that's your best time ever?
No, a year before that, which is December, and then April is the marathon in Boston.
Right.
So in December at Cal International, that was 2021, I ran my fastest PR of 2:48.
2:48. Beautiful. Amazing. So, do we have any others? Oh, right here.
I was just curious.
There's a microphone coming your way.
Thank you. This film was amazing. Bravo to all of you guys. It was so moving, so powerful, so beautiful. I was thinking that mentoring incarcerated people from people who have been through your program and gotten out and experienced what I'm sure for you is an immense gratitude for this program. Or would it be too hard for you to go back and be a coach and help some incarcerated people?
Thank you for that question. It had its challenges. However, I am allowed to go back in there now as a volunteer coach, and I do coach the guys and getting ready to help write guys letters for release for the Board of Prison hearings. So we're working on that, and so I do go back in there, and I also do run therapy coaching in the Tenderloin community of San Francisco. So it's been a big, help for me to be able to go back and, do giving back and doing those things that help me to be successful in rehabilitating myself. I want to, and I like to share that with the world and help other people. So that's what we're doing today.
So, the people that you're helping now, when you go back in, you probably know a lot of the different people that are there.
Yeah.
And is there any, at any level, any resentment that, like, yeah, you're out and you're doing fine, so how do they feel about that? Or are they all just grateful for you coming back?
Unless they're faking it, they all seem happy to see me and
That's good.
and very motivated and said that I give them hope. And they every time, and it's almost as if like they say, man, they come up to me, shake my hand and say, man, we watching you, we hoping that you continue to stay successful. Because I am an ambassador for those who are left behind, really literally, because I have, and I was a life-term incarcerated resident at that time. And whatever we do reflects those guys inside. It's like, see, look at them now.
Yeah.
So I got to make sure that I continue to do the things that are right so I can go in there and do those things to help those guys get out, because those are my brothers.
No, that's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
We're delighted to also share that since we had the screening of the film at San Quentin and it's been playing there, the 1,000 Mile Club membership has exploded. So there's more than like 100 members. They have like 15 volunteer coaches now. They're actually having to turn down coaches. Like there's an interview process, now with that. So that's very gratifying. And recently they had the marathon earlier this month or in November, and they had over 60 runners and I think like 23, 24 finishers.
Well, yeah, that's a number that I was really interested in because in the one that you filmed, or the overall marathon that's in the film, said that was a record, Rassan was a 13th finisher. How many people were in the race? Do you know?
I think about 30.
Yeah. It's just so impressive to me that you get even that percentage, but the willingness of the people to take it on, just incredible. Right up there in the back.
Christine, as a result of your efforts and the film that you made, do you think the prison authorities are more interested in making films similar to what you've done on different subjects? Are they more receptive?
You mean at San Quentin?
At the entire prison system in general, because you look at this film and you go, oh my God, that's extraordinary, whether it's in Ohio or wherever. It seems that these are the kinds of films that you need to show the public about what can be done in the prison system.
I mean, we have kind of an internal saying that hopefully the film, turns walls into windows for people. And we are, since we, started screening in festivals and stuff, we have been overwhelmed with the amount of inbound emails from prisons across the country, actually wanting to screen the film and wanting to have information about how do you start a prison running club. So we are in our major plans for 2024. We are planning to take the film to, across the country to a lot of different states that have requested for us to be there. North Dakota, New Hampshire, more in California, Illinois, Colorado, New York. So we hope that it can, inspire more clubs and really what these prison we've also screened it already at the Washington Correction Center where there is another club, and in a few prisons outside of Cleveland, Ohio, which, Ohio has like the highest incarceration rate in the world. I mean, I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring cameras in for some of this stuff. But yeah, I do think it's really important for the public to see really what goes on. I mean, I've worked on true crime series as well, so maybe I sort of sometimes feel this is my atonement for that because, those series, they're really focus on the dehumanization about the perpetrators of crime and not really necessarily getting the whole entire picture of what led people to those acts of violence. It becomes pretty apparent very quickly that most people have been, have gone to prison because of systemic poverty, systemic racism, issues with drugs, and it's all interconnected. So there is a phrase that you hear a lot there, which is, hurt people. So these things just sort of don't happen because, of course, there are crazy people that are out there. We do know that. But generally speaking, a lot of these people have been through incredible circumstances, violent circumstances early on in life as well. So.
Yeah. Victims create more victims is another way of looking at it. But I think to the point of the question that was asked is that having seen the success of this film, that maybe other filmmakers will have an easier time getting access to go to prisons in terms of being what you've been able to accomplish with this, maybe.
Hopefully. It's hard to say. It's
Let's
hard to
see.
say. I mean, I felt like we kind of had very unique circumstances. We had a very... this took a lot of time. So, as I think a commission piece by a major studio or something, it probably would have had been a very different film, just simply because we were making it on our own. We didn't have a time period of, okay, well, all the shooting has to be done in 6 weeks type of thing, which is usually what happens on series or whatever.
Well, thank you so much for a wonderful, wonderful film, and thank you so much for coming out, Markelle. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.